Halo is a game that spans over 2.5 decades in real life and over 100,000 years in the lore. Whenever my time isn't being taken up by streaming responsibilities or anime, it's usually occupied by learning about more and more of the Halo universe. It's one of the most expansive and lore-rich universes I've ever come across in fiction, where the only universes that seemingly outpace it in terms of content across multiple mediums, to my knowledge, are Star Wars and Warhammer. Humanity's state-of-the-art super soldier in the 26th century goes up against an alliance of multiple species known as the Covenant, vying for a massive ring-shaped, planet-sized object called Halo, capable of wiping out every living being in the galaxy. A David versus Goliath story for the ages. In real life and present day, Halo has been around for a little bit more than 25 years. It may have gotten its official start as a franchise back in 2001 with Halo Combat Evolved, but it actually started its development all the way back in 1998 or 1999 when Bungie Studios put Halo on the Macworld OS. It was never meant to see the light of day, but thanks to some data miners and dedicated fans, the official build of the true original Halo was made public by Halo Studios, also known as 343 Industries at the time. It was only one level long to my knowledge, but it served as such a groundbreaking point since so many fans never got to see this installment before, and now some fans say that this is the true starting point of Halo. In terms of literature, Halo is at its most abundant with a whopping 37 books at its disposal, starting with its first iteration in Halo: The Fall of Reach, and currently on its latest iteration at the time of this recording, Halo: Edge of Dawn. Its catalog has been considered the best way for people to learn more about the lore of its universe if they ever want to step outside of the games. But back in 2009, the franchise of Halo had decided to go down a route it had never attempted before. It would be its first attempt into the medium of television in the form of an anime. It ran for only 8 episodes and would come to be known as Halo Legends. This obviously isn't the first anime adapted from a video game, but what makes it unique is its episodic format that I believe Star Wars Visions would be inspired by years down the line. 7 unique stories in 8 episodes were produced, and each episode would be directed by different directors and animated by different studios as well, as it would set the stage for stories that the mainstream Halo community can enjoy for themselves. And we're going through all of them. If you've seen the show before, then come take a trip down memory lane with me and see what parts of the lore have aged great and which parts didn't. If you haven't yet, then join me as we take a journey through the eyes of a Halo fan from around the time of 2009. As a side note, I'm always appreciative of the support you guys are giving to the channel. Every like, sub, and comment really helps this channel, and I just wanted to say thank you. I've always wanted to be a YouTuber in the anime space, and every little thing you guys do to help support brings me that much closer to that dream that I wasn't ever sure I could pull off. Okay, enough with the sentimental stuff. Let's dive right in and let's talk about the Halo anime. The first 2 episodes are the only ones whose story is continued consecutively. But the episodes aren't a story, more like a recap or an introductory course of the entire timeline of Halo lore for anybody not familiar with the Halo franchise. It's mainly all narration by Cortana, the AI that you're paired with throughout the first trilogy of Halo games. The ship that Cortana and Master Chief were drifting on hasn't been found for years, and we start to see the first signs of rampancy, a condition which causes AIs to lose control of themselves due to them reaching their memory limit. However, as Chief and Cortana wait on and on for any sign of help, she starts to go over the entire history of the galaxy in which everything up to this point has taken place. Over 100,000 years ago, a great civilization known as the Forerunners existed and prospered. However, one day, a parasite known as the Flood invaded and decimated much of their population. However, this was no ordinary parasite, as the more that the Flood had assimilated the Forerunners into their own, the more intelligent they became. The Forerunners were pushed so far into a corner of their empire that they had to resort to a last-ditch effort where they managed to use a massive construct known as the Ark to create 7 Halo rings and spread them all across the galaxy. Altogether, these rings would wipe out all sentient life and flood biomass, which the Forerunners proceeded to do once they were all in in place. The galaxy would be then repopulated by multiple alien life forms since the Forerunners had them all indexed in their databases, storing data samples, embryos, and live specimens, and they all eventually returned to their home world. Even though the Forerunners had made the decision to sacrifice themselves activating the rings in the name of everlasting peace, it would ultimately end up in vain as humanity would start to fight amongst themselves. Cortana mentions how humanity would always resort to war, whether necessary or unnecessary, and how it was truly their oldest practice. Humanity was always divided and always choosing one side over the other and would never be truly unified. That is, until the year 2525, where the Covenant stumbled onto UNSC-controlled space and proceeded to lay waste to it. Outnumbered and outmatched, humanity's last hope lied in the Spartan 2 program, spearheaded by Dr. Halsey and led by Master Chief, aka John, aka Spartan 117. The Flood also returned to finish the job they once started in their goal to assimilate every singular life form in the galaxy. These two episodes were both produced by Studio 4 Degrees Celsius and were directed by Hideki Futamura. And if I'll be honest here, I'm really not sure why the studio didn't decide to combine both of these episodes into one relatively regular length episode. These were only 10 to 11 minutes long each and would have also worked fine like how any other anime series has done. But it is what it is. I'm not complaining either way. The next episode in the series is titled The Duel, and in my opinion, this is the best episode of the whole series. The Duel was directed by Hiroshi Yamazaki and Mamoru Oshii as the lead creative director, and it was produced by Production IG, one of the bigwigs of the anime world today. The amount of iconic imagery displayed here would make absolutely anybody fall to their knees in a Walmart out of sheer appreciation. Like back in the day, if you were on Twitter back in the ye old era of 2011, 2012, there would probably be like a 20% chance that a Halo fan's profile picture would be something that came out of this episode. This episode has a bit of a conflicting timeline since it's said to be taking place around 850 BCE, but because there's an enemy species known as the Grunts, or also known as Ungoi, present in the episode, it should take place around the 22nd century AD, since that was around the time they joined the Covenant. But for the sake of making things simple, let's just say the story takes place in 850 BCE. This is in the very early days of the Covenant. The story follows the elite arbiter named Fal Chavami, who is in a standoff with the higher prophets as he refuses the Covenant religion that wants to take part in the Great Journey. After a tense meeting with the Covenant leaders, an elite enforcer named Haka is ordered to bring the arbiter down. Sometime later, while training other elite warriors, Fal Chavami is confronted by his good friend Ro, as he tries to convince the Arbiter to accept the Great Journey, if not for the sole reason of him being stripped of his Arbiter rank. However, it's all for naught as the Arbiter remains headstrong in his commitment to defy the Covenant leaders. What happens next is just absolute tragedy for the Arbiter, as every single facet of his life is affected, from his family to his friend and the whole hierarchy of elite society. It really is a sight to behold, and the choreography in his fight between him and what's seemingly a whole battalion of Covenant is just mwah, 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 mwah. Absolute chef's kiss. Absolute love, love, love. And if you couldn't tell or describe why the style is so different, it's because Production IG used a watercolor style for the duration of the episode, and this was just so well executed that it's become the most iconic thing to come out of Halo Legends, and just one of the coolest things in all of Halo. It might be a little difficult to understand some of the actions of what's going on or why elites look somewhat different and almost more human-like, but at that point, you could just chalk it up to a design choice by the studio and its animators. I won't spoil anything else what happens here though, so I implore you to go watch this masterpiece of an episode. It'll be absolutely worth your time. Episode 4, titled Homecoming, displays two non-linear stories following Spartan 2 Daisy. Directed by Koichi Mashimo and Koji Sawai and animated by Production IG once more, along with Studio B-Train, the show returns to traditional 2D animation as we see another instance of war being absolute hell. One thing I haven't mentioned yet about the Spartan program is the fact that every single Spartan you see here in the show and beyond until way later in the war is a product of kidnapping and indoctrination while they were still young kids, anywhere between ages 5 to 7. Out of every planet and every single person in human-controlled space, only 150 children were selected after being identified through DNA testing. However, due to reduced funding, it could only support 75 children instead. The UNSC then kidnapped those 75 children and replaced them with Flash clones that were destined to die a few years later so as to keep the program secret. All of the children went through biological augmentations, and out of all of those 75 test subjects, 30 of them died and about 12 of them washed out, meaning that they either ran away or failed training of the sort, or they probably didn't want to see the battlefield in any capacity. In one of the stories of the episode Homecoming, Daisy, by all means of the definition, can be considered a washout, as she ran away from the Spartan training facility after holding her trainers at gunpoint before Dr. Halsey gives the go-ahead for Daisy to leave, along with some other Spartans that wanted to run away. After she escapes, she arrives to where she once lived on her homeworld of Sargasso, only to find a Flash clone in her place while wheelchair-bound. I'd also be morally conflicted if I saw a Flash clone of myself, with my parents not knowing that's the real me, and also not knowing on all sides that the Flash clone is going to die soon, giving my parents grief for the rest of their lives. So to spare the Flash clone from a life of hardship, Daisy points her weapon at the wheelchair-bound Daisy, but she's too hesitant to do it after the Flash clone gives her a small teddy bear, reminding her of that very same teddy bear she lost when she was abducted by the UNSC. So she lets her go and returns to the UNSC custody with no resistance. The timeline then flashes forward to the Harvest campaign around the time of the events for Halo Wars 1, a spin-off game in the main canon, around 2531, where Daisy is assisting some Marines that are trapped on the planet with no way out. As the way for an evacuation point is made, Daisy recognizes the voice of another Spartan washout named Ralph, who's back in the army, but this time as a Marine. It's heartfelt but short-lived, as when the Pelican dropship makes a risky landing, all the Marines are able to board safely while Daisy is still fighting on the ground before being impaled by needler rounds. She tries to give covering fire but could only do so in vain, as the Pelican is blown up due to a wave of fuel rod gun fire. She would then die shortly after due to her injuries as the episode ends. Overall, this episode for its time has pretty good animation, great cinematography, and a story as unforgiving as the future humanity was brought to understand if they didn't win the Human Covenant War. It falls flat a little bit in its pacing, but it doesn't make too much of a dent in the storytelling overall. Now, for all of my Halo fans, this next episode will trigger that nostalgia switch unlike any other because we have Odd One Out. The episode's director, Megami Shimizu, basically asked the question, what if Halo, but funny? This episode is basically a parody of Halo, and to my knowledge, the only parody of its kind in the entirety of Halo. Remember when I said that there was only 150 children that were selected for the Spartan 2 program? Well, this is how you know it's a parody, because this nameless Spartan doesn't have 3 digits assigned to them. He has 4. This is Spartan 1337, and he is the bravest warrior in the known universe. He says this right before getting eaten by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I am not kidding, and you didn't hear that wrong. There are dinosaurs on this planet that he crash lands on, and you'd think that such a high-value soldier, such as 1337, just falling from a Pelican should be an emergency. But then on a bigger ship, the Master Chief simply goes, "Oh, him? Yeah, this happens all the time. He'll be fine." Nobody bats an eye and just goes on with their day. And because this is a parody, I could summarize it really quick and carefree as opposed to the other episodes before and after it. The Covenant have a new big bad super weapon in the form of a genetically enhanced and modified brute, another species in the Covenant Alliance named Pluton. The Covenant get incorrect intelligence that the Master Chief was the one who crash landed onto the planet and send Pluton to hunt him down. I forgot to mention that the show was animated by Toei Animation, the same studio behind Dragon Ball and One Piece, so if you catch any glimpses of surprisingly good animation, then there's your reason why. So Pluton hunts down 1337 after he explains to some cavemen children that he's not just the Tin Man, but the bravest warrior in the known universe. And for whatever reason, the UNSC should have done the kidnapping on this planet, because who the fuck are these two people, and why are they able to go toe-to-toe with perhaps the strongest brute that the Covenant has ever had without any Spartan armor and augmentation? You can't make this stuff up, dude. Anyways, after a bit of battling, Pluton eventually gets the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure treatment and gets sent up into space, never to be seen again. And 1337 says his goodbyes to the planet's natives before joining up with the UNSC again. Honestly, this episode is literally like that meme where Brian Scalabrine says to a fan, "I'm closer to LeBron James than you are to me." Meaning, he may not be as good as his fellow peers in the Spartan department, but he can sure as hell bust up some Covenant bad guys if and when he needs to. This episode lives rent-free in my head for multiple reasons and only enforces my proclamation that we need more Halo parodies, period. Episode 6 returns to the serious aspect of the Human Covenant War. Directed by Tomoki Kyoda and Yasushi Muraki and animated by Studio Bones, another heavy hitter of today's anime industry, the story follows Ghost, a platoon leader that saw his squad get wiped out in front of him on an unknown planet. This episode dives into some heavy psychological aspects, especially as when Ghost is holding the last surviving member of his squad in his arms, close to death, and her last wish for him is to tell him to be human, something that would stay on his mind for years after the fact. 3 years later, Ghost gets called to the planet Algolis, where the Covenant has invaded and is attacking another military facility. The Marines stationed at the facility are taking heavy fire guarding the station, while the Hades Corps of the UNSC engineers is tasked with destroying all weapons and navigational data in compliance with the Cole Protocol. The Cole Protocol is a general order that states that any and all UNSC vessels or stations must not be captured with intact navigation databases that may lead Covenant forces to human civilian population centers. As the Covenant were making their final push to their base, Ghost exits the facility in what's seemingly a Spartan-like prototype suit of armor. And what proceeds after is an amazing display of a last stand and courage that makes other Marines say, "That's a Marine's Marine." This prototype suit also leads me to believe, since I don't believe it was confirmed in the episode, that this took place in a year where Spartan 2 armor wasn't fully developed yet and training had only just started for the children that were augmented on. But this prototype had everything you could want in one suit. It had shielding, a built-in machine gun, a rocket launcher, and a jetpack too. It was the quintessential suit that the Spartan program would later refine. And Ghost would proceed to take out enemy after enemy, also the other Marines would have a chance to get off of the planet. He even defied orders in enforcing the Cole Protocol so that he could save those Marines. However, in his last stand, his suit would take critical damage after a plasma grenade severed his left arm. All the while, he's having flashbacks to when his own squad had died on that unknown planet, and when that Marine died in his arms, he admits that a part of him died that day, leaving him to obtain that Ghost moniker for himself. The suit HUD displays a voice activation command for a self-destruction sequence with its trigger stating "Be human," another callback to the dying Marine's last wish. He then activates it, blowing himself up along with every enemy of the Covenant in the base's vicinity, while all the surviving Marines make their escape off the planet. This episode was just great storytelling through and through, and obviously the highlight of the episode was all of the action involved. Multiple minutes go by with no dialogue, and it just allows the viewer to take everything in, letting the capabilities of the prototype suit shine in its screen time. And just seeing Ghost come to terms with his own impending death, especially after the flashbacks that gave him his sense of humanity back, makes it all so bittersweet. This is my favorite form of what a sad episode is supposed to be. Moving on to episode 7, we have The Babysitter. Directed by Toshiyuki Kano and animated by Studio 4 Degrees Celsius, we now observe a dynamic that actually not many Halo fans know about if they've only played the games. But this episode follows a group of ODSTs, also known as Orbital Drop Shock Troopers. These guys are perceived to be the best of the best in the entire military. Nothing and nobody can match their skills on the battlefield. That is, until the Spartans came along. In the canon, ODSTs more or less have a form of animosity for the Spartans since they were the ones hyped up to be the best of the best and not them and all the training that they had done up to that point in time. But nevertheless, this group of ODSTs were tasked with taking out a Prophet by sniper. But the issue for them is that a Spartan will be joining them and taking the shot. One of the ODSTs, O'Brien, is pretty miffed, but overall goes with the plan. 3 out of the 4 ODSTs make it to landfall before setting out on their mission, with one of them burning up in the atmosphere and perishing. 3 of the 4 drop pods land in a forest in close proximity, while O'Brien lands in a swamp after hitting a cliff and breaking his oxygen tank in the process. And I love that this episode just displays another example of how strong Spartans really are, because instead of waiting for the ODSTs to get gear to retrieve O'Brien, this Spartan goes straight into the water and picks up the entire drop pod and throws it onto land. This Spartan saved O'Brien, and his squad mates only emphasized that fact more after that, but his pride only made him grow even more contempt for the Spartans and the program as a whole. Nevertheless, they proceed with their mission while photographing some ruins along the way to their destination. They also confront some Covenant troops along the way, taking out some cannon fodder, but not before they encounter a Brute Chieftain, the commander and strongest soldier of that specific squad. The Spartan gets the one-up on it, blinding it in one eye before eventually pushing it off a cliff and saving O'Brien again in the process. After that, the squad finally reaches its destination with 2 minutes before the Prophet arrives and everybody gets into position. However, the Brute Chieftain returns with a vengeance and severely wounds the Spartan, knocking the helmet off, showing the ODSTs and O'Brien specifically who it really was behind the visor. This Spartan's name was Cal 142, and she was as badass as it can get. The rest of the squad deal with the Brute Chieftain while severely wounded Cal directs O'Brien to take the shot on the Prophet, to which he'd be successful in eliminating the target and whipping the surrounding Covenant up into a frenzy. This episode displays great dynamic between the different factions of the UNSC and also has a good showing of how even when one organization harbors some animosity towards another, whether it was warranted or unwarranted, that common goal of allowing humanity to survive one more day can reveal itself and give new perspective, specifically to the ODST squad, and understanding that humanity and its best soldiers can still remain united when facing this massive threat of an enemy. There's not many stories out there in the Halo canon that dive deep into this topic, but if or when there is in the future, I'd love if it could appear in one of the games one day. The final episode, titled The Package, switches the style up once more, returning to 3D animation, and I gotta be honest here, for a part of the show that was animated in 3D, this style has aged like fine wine. Except for the one Spartan that looks one-to-one with the OG Fortnite guy, his chin is more pointy than Sung Jin Woo. Directed by Shinji Aramaki, written by Dai Sato, and animated by Casio Entertainment, 5 Spartans are tasked with retrieving a package from a Covenant fleet that is momentarily trapped in the local system. And I know I keep saying this, but let me be honest again, for a franchise that takes place in space more often than not, there really seems to be a lack of space combat outside of one singular mission in Halo Reach and a partial section of one mission in Halo 4, and I think it's a crime. But for what it's worth, I'm glad this show gave us an amazing display of space combat. 2 Spartans perish on the way to their destination as the remaining Spartans successfully locate the ship where the package is located. Once they disembark, we get treated to the scene that just about every other Halo YouTuber has used at least once in their B-roll footage, as Chief, Fred, and Kelly slice their way through wave after wave of Covenant enemies. However, the leader of the ship planned for this and orders his crew to straight up detach the entire part of the ship the Spartans are on like it was a Lego piece. Kelly and Fred boost the Chief up to the package's location while they're stranded in the vacuum of space. The Chief finally reaches the package, which is revealed to be, and this is really the biggest and one of the only issues out of the entire show that I had with, Dr. Catherine Halsey. The same Dr. Halsey that was so freaking smart that she created the entire Spartan 2 program. The Spartans basically went out on a retrieval mission to save their own mother. And the UNSC seemingly doesn't treat it with much respect, considering that humanity would have gone extinct without her. Like, dead ass, the Covenant just seemingly swooped in and put her in a cryopod for reasons? Reasons that they don't even understand? Like, there was more urgency put in when Professor fucking Anders was captured by the Arbiter in Halo Wars. But I digress. Halsey is finally released from captivity, and she and Chief make their way for an escape before being stopped by an elite swordmaster. A short but low-key kind of epic duel takes place to where the Chief is actually defeated, something even I was surprised by. But just as fate would have it, the shipmaster proceeds to detach a second part of the whole ship. Why these ships have the ability to do that on a whim, I will never understand. And since luck is the Chief's superpower, he and Halsey board an escape pod before being rescued by Fred and Kelly, who hijacked a Covenant Seraph and are taken back to their own ship, where the episode concludes. This episode definitely makes some of the decisions of all time, but I won't lie to myself and say I wasn't entertained by it. Overall, the animation was just very smooth and fluid. The characters' designs were generally solid. Except for the Fortnite guy. Why the fuck is his chin so pointy, dude? And all the Spartans' feats in this episode are really just more lore accurate to what you see in the games and in the books. So if you ever want an idea of how strong a Spartan was augmented to be, this is just an example of many. Overall, I'd say this is one of the weaker episodes, even though it still has its strengths here and there, and it serves as a fine enough conclusion for the series as a whole. Halo is a very special franchise to me. I've spent my life growing up with it, as the franchise has only grown more special to me as time goes on. And knowing that a Halo anime exists is just my 2 favorite things in the world colliding into a production that stays on my mind and in my heart for a long time, as well as many other fans of both anime and Halo as well. And even if you're not a fan of one or both of them, you can't deny it of the charm it harbors in its styles, characters, and dialogue, and all of those factors make for a product that is way more than the sum of its parts. This is Halo at its core. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, as every single one helps in the algorithm, and don't forget to subscribe, as it really boosts me towards my goal of monetizing the channel and helps me keep this dream I have of being a YouTuber as a career. Comment down in the comment section which episode was your favorite and what you liked about certain other episodes. I love reading your guys' opinions in the comment section, and I'm very happy to engage with you all. I have a Twitch channel that I stream on multiple times a week, so if you want to talk about more anime on there, or just drop in and say hi, I'll be over there as well. I'm cooking up a bunch of extra videos and shorts too, so please go check out all of those in the meantime. That's gonna be it from me, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Stay frosty and stay sexy, you absolute legends. Peace.